Once again, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir.
Last meeting, we have discussed on the different methods in finding the resultant vector. First is that we have discussed that we can readily solve the resultant vector using graphical method. And there are two options we can do in graphical method. First is we have the parallel or the polygon method, and next is the parallelogram method. Adi una day ang parallelogram method, then after that we have the polygon method. Ang parallelogram method, magamit lang nato ni siya kung duha ka buok ang vectors katong giad. No? So meaning to say, if we are given three vectors, primero na to ang duha sa atong kung tulo ka vectors ang gihatag, duha sa atong sulbon primero, then ang resultant atong duha mao na poy atong parallelogram method sa ikatulo, so that we can get the resultant sa tulo na dayon. So it's much more tedious, daghan kay kang himuon nga graph. Then in the polygon method, pwede na to i-ditso head to tail, ipang sumpay-sumpay lang atong vector. Then ang kinalasan nga vector is that ato siyang drawingan o vector from the origin to the end of the last vector nga atong giad, so that we have the resultant vectors, such as in the case here, vector A, sunod vector B, sunod vector C, sunod vector D, sunod vector E. So pila ka vectors? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 vectors. Then gikan sa sinugdanan, there is a tail sa A, vector A, padong sa head sa kinalasang vector, which is vector E. That is now our resultant. No? And we mentioned, it is noteworthy to mention that in doing graphical solution, in getting the resultant vector, we need to conduct scaling, because actually the vector that we draw in our graphing paper is just a mere representation of the actual vector quantity. So what I'm trying to say is that kung nakay 5 Newton, mag-scaling ka, ang imuhang quantity, imong scale siya into a length. Like for example, 5 Newton, maybe you say 5 Newton is just equals to 5 centimeters. So that if you have 10 Newton, you will also have 10 centimeters. Then we are going to make use of a protractor and a ruler. Okay? But wala lang nato nagibuhat. Actually, no, wala lang mo na ko pahimuan na kay lisod ang pag-check. Especially nga, submit ninyo sa inyong papel, you have to submit it digitally. So may tabo na digital niyo i-submit, inig-print na ko ana dire, ang may tabo mga usab na ang iyang dimensions, no? Probably ang 5 cm inig-measure na ko sa ruler, dili na 5 cm. So na nagi kausaban mo to nga wala na ta mag-check. Wala na ko magpahimo ang inyong anak. Then after discussing the graphical method, we discuss about the mathematical method. Wala diri sa book, but mathematical method can be classified into two. First is that we're going to make use of the polygon method, wherein it is only limited to 2 vectors, so that we can apply what you call this one? We can apply the laws of cosines and the laws of sine. Then after discussing that one, we have discussed about we've discussed on how to solve the resultant vector using the component method, wherein pili ta mo gamit og yun ani, mo gamit tag mga usingan ani kani, mo gamit ta og I, J, pwede. Actually pwede, no? Mao ra man siya, mo gagamit ra ka og complex number. But actually I stands for the X component and J stands for the Y component. Now, ang imong ma-add gyud is katulad yung mga pareha og kanang variable. Like for example, in this case here, I. I ug I, mo ra pwede nimo ma-add, then ang J ug J ma-add so that you have a resultant of 2I plus 10J. Now, kani, component ra sa siya. Okay. Now let us try to solve this, to solve some problems involving this one. Okay, so I will turn to nawala buangay, nawala man. Ayun sa history. Buang nawa. Ulga, palihog tag mute dai. Okay. So I will, let us try to solve. Say for example, you're given here a vector. Say for example, ipanto, palihog tag mute. Palihog tag mute, be. Say for example, we're given here vector A, 5 Newton at 30 degrees north of east. Say for example, you're given here vector B at 35 Newton, or 10 Newton at 45 degrees south of west. Then we have vector C at, say for example, 6 Newton at say for example, 20 degrees east of south. Okay, so we're given three vectors here. We're asked to find for the resultant vector. Again, so that we will have an idea on what we are dealing at. We need to draw the given. I will make it ato i-color code lang para dili kayo hassle. No, so sa first vector we have color blue. Okay, yun na siya katas This is at 30 degrees. Say for example, mo ni siya nga itong vector A. Next, we'll go to the next vector, vector B, 10 Newton, 45 degrees south of west. South, di ba? Ato sang balikon So kung kung imong tanawon ni siya, mao ni nga atong y axis, but actually kung atong tanawon ni siya sa direction, mao ni siyang north, mao ni siyang east, di ba? Mao ni siyang west, mao ni siya ang south. So 30 degrees north of east man. So meaning north siya from east. So gikan diri padong dito 30 degrees. Next vector is 10 Newton, 45 degrees south of west. Gikan siya sa west padong sa south. 45 degrees. Yeah, 10 Newton. So most probably yung ana na 10 Newton man so taas. This is our vector B. Next, ikatulo na tong vector is vector C, 6 Newton, 20 degrees east of south. Gikan siya sa south, padong sa east. So probably yun na, taas siya gamay ani, vector C. And this is 20 degrees. Okay, mauna na nga itong given. Now, kung mauna na itong given, unsa tayo una na itong buhaton? Sunod na itong buhaton is that we're going to get the reference angle. So, kung ano ito primero ang reference angle? Ato relato sa sunod nga sheet, ha? So, sa first reference angle, we have theta sub A. Theta A is equals to, kung saan man ang reference angle? From the definition, reference angle is the angle from the positive x-axis padung sa imong vector. So kung mao ni imong positive x-axis which is east, padung dito pila may reference angle. Automatically, klaro kayo given na diadaan. Reference angle is equals to 30 degrees. Next, reference angle. We have theta B. Theta B, again, from the definition, reference angle is the angle from the positive x-axis towards the vector. So gikan dire padung dito pila man na kani padung dire. Di ba? This is 180 plus 45. 180 plus 45 pila man? That is 225. So that is 225 degrees. The next reference angle is theta C. Theta C, kanang reference angle is the angle from the positive x-axis towards the vector. So kung gikan dire, this is 90, this is 180, this is 270 plus 20, that is equivalent to 290. So this is 290 degrees. Okay. Why do we need to get the reference angle? Dili pa na to ma-appreciate dire ngano. But later on, ini come up na to sa solution, makita na to nga importante kayo nga ikuha na to daan ng reference angle. Because without the reference angle, libog. Kinahanglan ka mag-analyze sa drawing. Okay, balik ta dire. Sa kaning imong vector A, kung imong tanawon imong vector A, mo imong vector A. Anyara ando di mao. 30 degrees man. So kung ana. Now kung mag-draw kag triangle ana niya, kung drawingon na nimong triangle, sama ra nagmoingon ka ani nakay kani o kani. Mo nimong vector A, di ba? Vector A, and this is 30 degrees. Okay? Nakay duha. Nakay duha ka component. Unsa may mga component ano niya? Siyempre, nakay gitawag diri og AX or the horizontal component of your A and your AY or the vertical component of your A. 30 niya, 30. Hindi kayo klaro. Usay bot na ko ipasabot. Ang usa ka vector which is vector A, pwede na to i-represent siya into two vectors. Anyway, ang AX plus AY is just equals to A man. We get the component of the vector. Okay? So usa may mahitabo dayon. Kani, usa ra to pag-solve sa AX ug AY. Okay? Again, mugamit ta sa katong trigonometric identities or trigonometric functions. Kung kinumdum mo sa inyong pag high school, katong mga STEM, o katong mga dili STEM na I'm sure nakaagian ni, natay gitawag og soka tuwa. Kinumdum mo ni?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wherein sine is equals to opposite over hypotenuse. Mo nang naa kay so. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Mo nang naa kay ka. Then tangent is opposite over adjacent. Mo nang naa kay towa. Okay? So that atong tagsa-tagsaon dire. sine of 30 degrees. Sa may tabo, sine of 30 degrees. Sine of the 30 degrees is equals to opposite over the hypotenuse because this segment here, AY, is the opposite of the angle. So therefore, sine ang gamiton. So we have AY all over A. Okay? Transpose, kani ibalhin dito, or di o kani ibalhin dito, we have, mabilin this because is only AY is equals to sine 30 degrees. Okay? We managed to represent AY in terms of, ano pa rin, nalimutan ng A. AY is equals to A sine 30 degrees. We managed to represent AY in terms of A. We managed to represent the component of the vector in terms of the original vector. Okay? So the same principle kung magamit ko sa cosine. So say for example, cosine of A is also equals to adjacent, which is AX all over the original vector or the hypotenuse, which is A. Again, transpose, we have AX is equals to A cosine of theta. We managed to represent the horizontal component of the vector in terms of its original vector. Okay? So sa may itong timanan, basta magamit tag reference angle, automatic AY gani sine atong gamiton. AX gani atong gamiton is cosine. Nana siya configuration daan ug sa production line pa ni siya nana siya Pukayuki. Pukiyuki or gitawag na siya Pukiyuki sa Japan, which basically means mistake proofing. Di na ka masayop. Imo lang dimanan. AY gani ang pangitaon, automatic ang gamito na to is sine. AX gani ang pangitaon, ang gamito na to is cosine. Okay? So that balik ta dire. Ato solbon ang AX. AX is equals to buang. AX is equals to, di ba? Kaya bawa naman ta. A sine ba to? Limot na ko na. AX o cosine.
Cosine, sir.
Cosine dahil. A cosine of theta A, which is 30 degrees. Okay? Or we have AX is equals to, pila to ang A? Balik ko na to dili. Ang A, pila to? 5.
5.
5 cosine of 30 degrees. Or AX is equals to, gamitan na to o calculator, 30 cosine times 5. Answer, 4.33.
33.
We have 4.33 units should be Newton. Okay. Now let us proceed now to AY. AY is equals to A sine of theta A. In this case, theta A is equals to 30 degrees. Ato na dito suot ang 30 degrees. Or AY is equals to, pila to ang A? 5. 5 sine of 30 degrees. The sine of 30 degrees is equals to 0.5 muna. So we have here AY is equals to
2.5.
2.5 Newton. Okay? So nakuha na nato ang mga components sa itong vector A. Next, we'll proceed now to vector B. Vector B. So we have AX equals to B cosine of, atong gamiton is theta B, which is in this case 225. Nagkanam nagkabati akong agi. AX is equals to, pila to ang B? Ang B is 10. Cosine of 225 degrees. Kinsa to ko? AX is equals to, gamita itong calcio.
Negative ba, sir?
Oh, 225 cosine times 10. The answer? Negative 7.07. Okay. Pareha tag answer, negative.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Nganong negative man? Balik ta dire. Kung imong tanawon, ang atong vector B, gahandag siya paubos padong dire. So asa man yang x component? Nara. Padong dire. Negative. Diba? So dili ta kinahanglan mo tan-aw sa drawing. Kung atong gikuha ang yang reference angle, automatic kay mao na ta nga negative ang answer. We need not analyze the drawing. Sure sa taning ang atong BY padong mo sa ubos. Kay mao sa taning ang atong BY should be negative. Ano man? Mubalik ni siya sa laws of trigonometry. In the laws of trigonometry, in the first quadrant,
Mayang!
i-mute.
Nangunsa mo na nga?
I-mute.
Mo nang hipos.
Oh, panghipos mo, igumagpangaon. I-mute palihog dahil. Okay. Kay mo na tadaan, anak, igamit na reference angle. Nga naman, sa rules of trigonometry, kung nakainomdom mo sa inyong trigonometry, the first quadrant, all of the trigonometric functions are positive. Di ba? Sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, secant, and cosecant, all of them are positive. Di ba? Positive ba siya tanan? Basta na dire. Dire sa second quadrant, kung sa may mahitabo, sa second quadrant, ang negative dire ang cosine ug ang tangent, di ba? Sa third quadrant, negative dire ang sine, negative po dire ang cosine. Dire sa positive dire ang tangent. Dire negative dire ang sine ug ang tangent. Okay? So, unsa man itong gigamit sa AX? Di ba? Cosine man to. So, klaro kay nga negative. Unsa man itong gigamit sa AY o BY? Di ba? Sine man to. Klaro kay nga negative. Kaya nabilong man siya sa third quadrant. Okay? I'm sure nga nakaagi mo na pag high school. I-discuss na. In the first quadrant, in a Cartesian coordinate plane, all of the trigonometric functions are positive. The second quadrant, two trigonometric functions are negative. That is cosine and tangent. In the third quadrant, two trigonometric functions are negative, sine and cosine. In the fourth quadrant, two trigonometric functions are negative, sine and tangent. Of course, negative sa dang iyang mga reciprocal ani. Sa reciprocal sa cosine, di ba secant? Reciprocal sa tangent, cotangent. Reciprocal sa sine, cosecant. No? Anyway, so mo na negative. Expected sad nga ang anong i man eh, gibutang pagkabubuo. B ni siya, B. Sorry class ha, na sipyat ko. BX ni siya. Kaduha naman ita. Sunod, BY, it is expected sad nga negative sa itong answer. So let us try. BY is equals to B sine of theta b, which is 225. Paitay, nabuang na kong mouse. Bati na kay Gagi. Hina, anyway, mabasa man. By is equals to, ang b na to is 10. Sine of 225 degrees. Or by is equals to, gamitan calcio, the same ang answer. Gamitan calcio, ang answer na to is the same. Okay. That is negative 7.7.
0.0.
Unit would be Newton. Okay. Now let us proceed now to the third vector, which is actually vector C. So we have Cx is equals to C cosine of 290 degrees. Cx is equals to, ang C na to is 6. 6 times cosine of 290 degrees. Or Cx is equals to, gamitan na itong calcio, 290 cosine
2.0.
times 6, answer
2.05.
2.05 Newton. Okay? Positive. Lang, anong positive man, sir? Positive siya, kaya kung imong tanawon, gahandag siya padong sa tuo. So meaning to say, ang iyahang x component is padong dire, which is towards the positive x axis. And of course, sign here is positive. Kung sa may negative dire, the cosine here is positive. Kung sa may negative dire, ang negative dire is sine, which is actually the y component of your vector. Okay? So now let's proceed to get the vertical component of vector C. So we have Cy is equals to C sine of 290 degrees. Or Cy is equals to, ang C na to is 6. Sine of 290 degrees. Cy is negative. Let us try. Calculate. 290 sine times 6. Answer is 5.64. Negative.
Wow.
Okay? So, nana kay Victor. Nana kay mga components sa imong tulong ka vector. Now, let us get the overall resultant. Okay? So, we have Rx is just equals to AX plus BX plus CX. Or Rx is equals to, pila may AX? 4.33 plus, oops, sayop. Ano man, minus man, negative man, minus 7.07. Sunod, plus 2.05. Again, using calculator,
Negative.
negative 4.33 minus 7.07 plus 2.05. Answer is negative 0.69.
9.
Negative 0.69 Newton. Next, we get Ry. Ry is equals to EY plus BY plus CY. Or Ry is equals to 2.5
4.
agay minus din eh. Minus 7.07
0.7.
minus ning bati ning
5.
magi
5.
5.06. Or we have Ry is equals to
Negative 10.
minus 7.07 minus 5.64. Answer is negative 10.21. Pareha tag answer?
Yes, sir.
Negative 10.21 Newton. Okay? Now that is now our duha ka component sa atong resultant vector. Now we need to get the resultant vector. Okay, so sa atong buhaton, let us try to draw. Inig-draw na to. Okay. So sa pag-drawing sa line, muhiwi na. Okay. 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 Now, ato i-draw. Asa man ang atong kuan? Rx. Rx is negative 6.9. So, asa man ang negative 6.9? For sure, padong na dire. Gamay ra, kay 0.69 naman. Diba? Asa man tong Ry? Balik ta. Ry na to is negative 10.21. Asa man ang negative 10.21? Na paingon dire. Taas na siya.
Ubos.
Now, kung ato na siyang ibalihin dire, ato himong head to tail, yun ana nagporma. So that we can get our resultant. Paingon na dire atong resultant sa ubos. Mo atong R, kani siyang dire, mo ni atong Rx, mo ni siyang atong Ry. Of course, Rx and Ry are perpendicular to each other. Why? Because kani siya horizontal component man, ang atong Ry is vertical component. So that kibota nga perpendicular. Kay perpendicular magana all the time ang vertical sa horizontal. Now kay kung perpendicular na sila, we can apply the laws of right triangle, which is what we call as kinumdum pa mo?
Asa si Aga?
Ha? Kinumdum pa mo? Katong giinbento ni Pythagoras?
Prism.
Ha?
Triangle.
Wa mo kinumdum? Kung katong giinbento ni Pythagoras, unsa man?
Pythagorean theorem.
Oh,
Pythagorean theorem.
Pythagorean theorem, wherein it states that the square of the hypotenuse is just equal to the sum of the squares of the sides. So we have, di ba, Pythagorean theorem, c squared is just equals to
A squared plus B squared.
b squared. So kinumdum na mo no. Limot na mo sa ngan. So sa may hypotenuse niya, ang hypotenuse niya is actually ang r. So we say r is just equals to the square root of, aron mawa na ang r squared, the square root of a, pwede ka ning rx, pila man tong rx? 0.9, negative. Ang negative,
Negative.
square di mo na, automatic, mahimo ra ng positive. So pwede ra dito na kabutangan og negative. Pwede ra dili. 0.69
0.
squared plus RY. Pila may RY? Negative 10.21. Again, negative. Squared man nato ni mo. Wa ra gyapon ni negative. Wa na gamit.
Positive.
Oh, pwede di na ibutang. So we have
Positive
10.21
10.20
squared.
squared.
So that we have R is equals to atong gamitan og kalkyo 0.69 squared
Squared.
plus
0.
10.21
10
squared
squared.
equals
104.
square root. Oh, square root naman. Answer
Ah.
is 10.233 or
33.
10.223
230.
or 23 na lang. At least pareha. Common ta na itong answer. 10.23 Newton. Na-solve na na ito ang
Newton.
resultant. Now karon, resultant pa na, that is the magnitude of the resultant. We do not know yet the direction. So asa man tong direction ana? Actually duha ka klase nga direction imo pwede makuha. Pwede ka makuha aning angle dire. Ato lang ni usbon ang drawing ha. Nganong usbon nato kay aron mo so pinakadako dire. Ato usbon ang drawing, ato lang dili na to i-scale kayo ang drawing. Okay? So giyon ana man natong resultant. Giyon ana man tong resultant, di ba? Ato lang iana R, mo na siyang R, nakay gitawag dire og RY, nakay gitawag dire og RX.
RX.
RX, naka dire pod RY. Pwede ra ka asam pag angle, pwede ka diring angle, pwede sa ka diring angle. Asam ka gusto? Saan ka masaya? Dire, dire.
Sigasa, sir.
Bisig asa. Kasi butan ta diri ta magkuha. So kana siya imuhang theta R. Now unsa man imong theta R? We can make use of kani pila to ni? This is RY. Kani this is RX. Ay, buang. RX. So, pili ka mo gamit sa tuwa. Tangent. Pili ka mo gamit sa tangent.
Over adjacent.
Opposite over adjacent.
Opposite
Tangent
by
of theta R is equals to opposite, which is actually opposite niya is RY all over RX.
X.
Or tangent of theta R is equals to pila mang RY to na to? RY na to is negative 10.21.
29. 21.
21, oh. Divided by negative 0.69.
0.69.
Or we have our resultant direction or resultant angle is just equals to the arc tangent of pila may answer ani atong gamitag kalkyo negative 10.21
0.78. Oh, 80.
10.21 divided by 0.69. Answer is positive kay negative negative positive 14.80.
Positive.
14.80 for theta R is equals to arc tangent. So kung mao ni siya 14.797, ato lang himo na dito 14.80, no? Aron kuan yun. If second function tangent, answer is 86.13 degrees. Again, 86.13 degrees, asam na siyang angle, di ba? Kaning angle. unsa man ni dire, di ba? Kani man ni siyang angle, kani. Unsa man ni siya dire, di ba? This is west, this is north, this is east,
Sa
and
is
this is south. Unsa man ni siya ang angle? Unsa man? Ini idea? Gikan siya dire, west, padong dire. Ini idea?
southeast,
South,
South of west.
south of west.
west,
South of west.
Oh,
south
south
of west,
of
yeah.
west.
West.
That is now our final answer. So, what is now the resultant vector? The resultant vector is 10.23 Newton at 86.13 degrees south of west.
West.
Basta yun siya. Kaysa sa katong sine law o cosine law. But the problem here is that taas ang solusyon. Now, kung taas ang solusyon, ang may tabo nimo, nasayop kadaan dire, nasayop kung analyze nimo dire. Siyempre sayop na ni. Sayop ni, siyempre sayop na ni. Kung sayop ni siyang duha, of course, sayop po ni. Kung sayop ni, sayop po tong dito ganiha, sayop po ni. Wrong na mong answer daan. Mo lang nakaapan na niya. Because the solution of each of the components will determine the actual answer. Taas man siya.
Solution matters.
Nakasabot mo, wa?
Nakasabot.
Sabot na, sir.
Sayo naman, no? Nakadiscuss ba tayo pag last time? Wala, no? Nakadiscuss tayo katong lecture ta last before Holy Week.
Murag kuan ka sir pero wala man guro to na human or na human ito example kag isa.
Okay. So next meeting, we will be having a quiz involving in ani.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh my goodness, nga naman. Ngano de Miriros?
Sir, pwede mangutana.
Unsa man? Oh. Unsa may pangutana nimo, Lienos?
Unsa gito pagkuha ang ko-answer katong final answer? Tungtan
Arctan, kani?
Kana sir ba? Saan mo na sir?
Kaning arctan
Kanang
dyan?
86.
Kani?
Oh, kana sir.
Yes, sir.
Kung naka-answer
Oh,
naman
kana.
ni kani naka-answer naman ni 14.80 is shift tangent.
Shift ay. Okay, thank
Wala na nilabot ng arc sir.
Kanang arc mo naman na siya, shift man na siya, arc tangent man na, di ba? Ang nasa inyong calculator is tangent negative 1. Kita mo sa akong calculator?
you, sir.
Kita mo sa
Nakuha
akong
na nako, sir.
Oh, kita mo sa akong calculator karon? Wa.
Yes, sir, kita.
Oh, tanaw mo sa tangent diha na. Tangent na inibisito nimo second function, tangent negative 1. Kanang tangent negative 1 is actually arc tangent. Binali ba?
Okay.
For example, na kay 0.5. Kwaon nimo kung unsa man na siya ang arc sine of 0.5. That is actually shift sine. Mo na mag-cancel kag 30 degrees. Okay? Now, asa may iyang mga applications ani? Daghan. Daghan no. Ang gibuhat diri sa libro class gagamit siya og mga complex number mo tong gagamit pero actually mo maor gyud na. Arc tangent gyapon siya. Okay. Now let us proceed with our discussion. What is force? The concept of force is used to describe how a massive body is affected by acceleration or mechanical stress.
Yes.
No? Because not all the time that you exert the force, it will cause movement. No? Dili man. Tistingin ninyo, ituod ninyo na yung bumbong. Mahurot na lang inyong energy, di na siya mag-irog. but it makes a mechanical stress. It affects the wall in a form of mechanical stress. No? But sometimes ang force ma-cause og acceleration. So duha ka buok ang effects in applying force to an object. It could be acceleration or it could be a mechanical stress or it could be both. Force can also be described by intuitive concepts such as push or pull that can cause an object with mass to change its velocity to accelerate, or which can cause a flexible object to deform. Related concepts to accelerating forces include thrust, any force which increases the velocity of the object, drag, any force which decreases the velocity of any object, and torque, the tendency of a force to cause changes in rotational speed. No? Kung sa mga kinds of force, we have thrust, we have drag, or we have torque. Force may be defined simply as a push or a pull. The push or pull may result from a force of contact between bodies or from a force such as magnetism or gravitation, in which no direct contact takes place. Force has both magnitude and direction, making it a vector quantity. Newton's second law states that an object with a constant mass will accelerate in proportion to the net force acting upon and in inverse proportion to its mass. Equivalently, the net force on an object equals the rate at which its momentum changes. No? So, ganiha, force man to example. Then we have resultant, is a single force which produces the same effect upon a body as two or more forces acting together. Okay? So, parihara na dire. Parehas yung gingon. Say, for example, you have a single force here. Ngayon, ana. Pwede ko, dili ko mo gamit ang nga force. Pwede kani akong gamiton nga force, kani, o niya, dungagan ako ani. The effect of the two forces equals the same, equals ani. But pasabot, kani akong duha ka component forces, kung akong i-add, will have a resultant force in ani. The same ra. Pwede ra kani akong gamiton o pwede kaning duha. Okay, mo na but pasabot. It is a single force which produces the same effect upon a body as two or more forces are acting together. Like in this one here, ang mga tao nagtuod og boulder. Pagtuod niya sa boulder, F1, F2, F3, F4, the resultant force sa boulder is, resultant force F is just equals to the summation of the four forces. Nga naman, because these four forces are collinear or they act on the same direction. Padong mas lang dito tanan. Unless of course kaning usa ni padong diri speakers. Mo nang ma-minus siya. Okay? Na kung ikaw ra usa, kung imong resultant force is F1 ra, of course mas hinay. Kay daghan man ni. Now binali katong ganiha atong gihimo ganiha is components. Components are the separate forces which can be so combined. But pasabot daghan nga mga forces, usa ka forces, but you can represent it in two forces. Okay? Atong gibuhat asa turon. Dara. Natay usa ka force A atong gi-represent og duha which is AX and AY. Binali. Ganiha ang resultant daghan nga forces i-represent atong usa. Dinhi usa ka forces himo na tong duha. Actually, ang component forces class dili lang siya limited sa horizontal o vertical, but to make our discussion madali atong discussion, we will limit lang sa horizontal component o sa vertical component. Nga naman, kay og maglain pa nga component, lain nga dimension na may tabo, na inigtanaw na to, magtulingig puta mo, ana po tagtanaw, mulingi itong liog. Ayahay kitong tulingig na daan, kay straight na para sa ila. Okay? The next, we have concurrent forces, are forces that meet in one common point. Because there are times, class, nga ang forces doesn't meet in a single point. Dili siya concurrent forces. Mo na gitawag na itong non-concurrent forces. For example, karon, nakay siso. nga kay seesaw. Of course, kaning seesaw na ay fulcrum dire. Kaning fulcrum nimo, ni-exert na siya force pataas. Di ba? Ni counteract man na siya. Kaya wala pa na siya diha. Ang tabo, ang seesaw na mahog na siya padung sa center of the earth. There must be a force nga nag-counteract diha. Okay? Say for example, na dire galingkod. Babaye man ka. Ya dili kay gadit mo si mong uyab, na diri mong uyab galingkod. But then mong uyab is tambok. So what will happen? Siyempre, kani ikaw, because of your weight, niwang man ka, na kay force
Saka.
gabana. Kani tambok man, na kay force nga gabana. So what will happen? Ato lang balihon na. Ato lang balihon. Ari lang nato ibutang. Gapasaka, ang force gaak diha, ang ikaw, na kay force dire gamay. So what will happen? Actually, kung imong tanawon ni siya, tanawon nimo in a perspective, for example, i-consider siya nimo usa ka object nga gamay, they acted on the same object. They acted on the same object. They should be concurrent forces, but actually, they do not act on a single point. Kani siya ga-act dire, kani siya usa ga-act dire. Dili siya single point. So what will happen? Nya ang ga-act dire na dire. Dili gusta, wa gyud sila ma single points. Nindot unta to, kung kani silang duha bayi ug laki, napa ni sila dire. Ano man, ga-act siya na single point. Parehas sila gi-act silang duha kani o kani. But wala man, naman dire. So what will happen? It will cause the object to rotate. It will cause torque. Mo nang gitawag og torque. Motoyo. Imagine na ikaw naka sa lamisa. Akong ituod ang lamisa, diri ko sa usa ka kilid sa lamisa. Ari ko sa kilid sa lamisa, mutod ko dire. Diyan na ako'y kauban, mutod siya, pero nasa sa pikas kilid sa lamisa. What do you think will happen to the lamisa? The lamisa will rotate. Nga naman, because we acted not on the same point, but on different points on the same object. Okay? So mo nang pasabot anang concurrent ug non-concurrent forces. Concurrent forces are forces that meet in one common point, while non-concurrent forces are forces that do not meet in one common point. The non-concurrent forces act at different points on an object and results in a net turning moment or torque. Next, equilibrium. Equilibrium is a state of a system whose configuration or large-scale properties do not change over time. A system is at equilibrium if the net force acting on a body is equal to 0. It is a condition of a system in which competing influences are balanced, and it may refer to the stationary point of dynamical system, and it is often called as equilibrium. Many things are in equilibrium. Say for example ron, karsada na kadihay gitawag og wooden crate. Unsa man ang wooden crate? Kana kung sudanan sa buwad. Actually, there are different forces acting on this one. First force na nag-act niya is the force of gravity. And of course, to counteract gravity, there must be a force that the ground exert. Or else, unbalanced forces, it will cause the object to accelerate. But in this case here, ang wooden crate is stationary nga nagpatong diya sa ground. So there must be a balance. There must be an equilibrium. So kanusan siya mahimo equilibrium? Probably, kani siya nga weight must be equal ani nga force. They must be equal. So that kung i-add nimo silang duha, it will result to 0. 0 net force. And according to Newton's second law of motion, or the first law of motion, an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by a force. Although na siya by a net force. Silang duha na ay force, but the net force is 0 man. So meaning to say, equilibrium siya at rest. Okay? Please continue reading na lang. We will discuss this next meeting after our quiz. Again, paminaw. Stop share ha. Ang atong quiz next meeting, again, I will upload in our Google Classroom to Google Sheets, Google Form. First Google Form are the questions, and the next Google Form is the answer sheets. Then kinahanglan nga mo upload mo sa inyong answer sheet adto sa Google Form nga answer sheet. Di ba? Sa Google Form, naman ay answer sheet, question number 1, attach file. I-attach nyo dito. Number 2, attach file. Picture niyo yung answer, i-attach. Then pag humana na, once nga ma-attach na, usap pa mo turn in dito sa Google Classroom. Kaya may tabo ko itong miagi, na ay daghang wa mo turn in. So kay wa mo turn in, wala ko muhatag og bonus na 10 points. Di ba? Kaya 3 items mo to, 3 questions, 30 points each. The 10 points. Sorry. Sa kwan dito nako sa pikas nga sa kwan dito, engineer ka namin naglibog na nung kuda. So yun na ha, na Google Sheet, Google Form. Question number 1, na attach file. I-attach na ninyo ang inyong answer sa number 1. Then sa question number 2, attach file sa ninyo ang answer niyo sa question number 2. Then after ana, i-submit ninyo, mo turn in then mo dito sa inyong Google Classroom. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Are there any questions?
Okay, sir.
Wala na, sir.
Wala. Let us check your attendance. Pizza also. Alcocero. Wa. Amarante.
Present, sir.
O naman sa Alcocero lagi. Alcocero na. Amarante na hapon. Komersyasi. Komersyasi wa. Duarte. Duarte wa. Hernandez, Joan.
Present, sir.
Present. Jera, Charlie May.
Present, sir.
Okay. Llenos, Olga.
Present, sir.
Okay. Next is Martinez, Christy J.
Present, sir.
Okay. Monteclar, Elaika.
Present, sir.
Morel, Vic Antoinette.
Present, sir.
Nuevo,
Sir.
Jess Arcade.
Present, sir.
Piedad, Charmel.
Present, sir.
Remotigue, Mary Rose. Wa. Sabuero, Arturo.
Present, sir.
Sotiliesa, Angeline.
Present, sir.
Tano, John Rex.
Present, sir.
Yapak, Justin. Wala. Ipanto, Jocelyn.
Present, sir.